We have with us today Miss Karina Henry, giving others a few minutes to join, who will be sharing her international experience with us this afternoon. So, I know we're not used to lives on Thursdays, so if you know somebody who would usually be on the live, go ahead and share the link with them. Let them know we're on today. We have a special guest who will be sharing her international experience with us today. She is from America and she has traveled outside of the United States to teach abroad. Something new on this platform, almost all our teachers who have come to share their experience with us are from different countries and they come to the United States to teach. In this case, Miss Henry left the United States to go outside to a different country to teach. So we want to hear what inspired that today. If you are here, go ahead and share this link so others can join so that we can learn today about Miss Henry's adventures and her teaching experience outside of the United States. I'm going to give others a few more minutes to join and share if you're there in the live. Go ahead and put something in the comment section so I can see that you're there. Just join in, say where you are. Hey, Horatia Fleming, where you're joining from. Hey, Julian Dixon. I'm not sure if Karina can see the message, but somebody's saying, hey, Dr. Brittany and Miss Henry. You should be able to see it, but I'm not sure if she's able to see it. She's backstage now, but I'm sure when she joins, you guys, if you have questions at the end, we will be taking questions at the end. Now, if you are here, go ahead and share the link so that others can join. Go ahead and share it on your WhatsApp status or your Facebook status, wherever you want to share it, so that we can learn from Miss Karina Henry, an American born who left the United States to teach outside of our country. Hey, Lexi Lee from Taiwan. Thanks for joining. I wonder what time it is now. I'm going to ask that question again. I know you were live last Sunday. Hey, Ripton from Jamaica. Thanks for joining. Go ahead and share the live, guys, so that others can join. We're going to give you a few minutes more, maybe 2 minutes more, then we'll get straight into it. So as I mentioned earlier, Miss Karina is the first guest, 7 a.m. Friday morning. Lexi, so I guess you're getting ready to go to work. Wow. So this is our first guest that has traveled outside of the United States to seek teaching job in different countries. Almost all the guests that have come on this platform are from different countries, to include Jamaica and Africa, I think. And they all have come, or should I say, most of them migrated from their home country to the United States. Some went to Abu Dhabi, some went to Japan. I think that's what we've gotten before. So rest assured, Miss Henry is a new for us. So we're gonna get straight into it because I don't want to make us wait any longer. I'm gonna do the introduction. So our guest today, as I've been saying, is Miss Karina Henry, who is a proud New York native with Southern roots, who purchased a one-way plane ticket to China, where she lived and worked as an English teacher for 2 years. One-way ticket, guys. A one-way. Can you imagine that? Karina enjoys exploring the world and has lived in 4 countries, including her home country, United States, Thailand, China, and Mexico. In addition to traveling, she enjoys helping Others explore the world. So, through her Teach Abroad program, many individuals have moved abroad as teachers. Karina is the founder of Karina Worldwide LLC and Karina's Virtual Learning Academy for ESL learners. We're definitely going to talk about some of these things later on in this interview. She's also the author of the book series, The Amazing Adventures of Kaylin, the Kid Traveler, a children's book series inspired by her real life experiences as a teacher living in China and traveling throughout Asia, Africa, North America, and Europe. When Karina isn't traveling the world, teaching or writing, she enjoys spending time with her awesome support system and shopping. She also enjoys documenting her adventures, struggles, challenges, and triumphs as an expat to inspire others who are interested in living life while experiencing the world, whether it's domestically, internationally, temporary, or permanently. Guys, please help me welcome this evening Miss Karina Henry.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hello, Miss Henry. Are you doing this evening?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well and inspired already by your story.
Thank you.
So I'm excited also. We're going to get straight into it because I'm sure our viewers, those who are live and those who will be rewatching, they are going to be interested in finding out why is it you're leaving the United States to teach abroad when we were trying to come to the United States to teach? Well, we will get into that as soon as we progress further. So, my first question to you, though, Miss Henry, did you always want to become a teacher?
No, not at all. It's funny because my dream job when I first went to college was to be a veterinarian. I loved animals, and then after my first year of college, when I went to biology, it was so hard that I was like, "Oh no, I can't do this." So I changed my major to English, and then even with that, it was never to teach. It was just because I was really good at it. It's my native language. I was
Yeah,
like, I can definitely get a quick degree with this. Um,
yeah.
but even before I moved to Thailand and then China, it was because of the benefits. And then I just fell in love with teaching and educating.
Wow, wow, wow. So, my question is, did you ever teach in the United States?
I did. I taught in the United States for 3 months. And I was like, oh, these parents are crazy. The kids are crazy. Everybody is. And I hate to use the word crazy, but that's exactly how I felt. I was just like, especially when you teach in other countries, you see the difference. And I don't like to pin countries versus countries, but in the States, it just felt like there was so much pressure on the educators and less pressure on the parents and the
Yes,
students. And
yes,
I can understand if a child is a kindergartner or a first grader, but we have whole high school students that are close to adulthood, and we're babying them, and we're blaming the educators for everything. And so after that, after those 3 months, I had a parent that told me to meet her outside, and I was like, oh no, that's it for me. Mhm.
what was that meeting about?
This was actually during the pandemic, the start of the pandemic. I came back from China for what was supposed to be just a month long vacation. It was Chinese New Year. And so at that moment, it was just a whole bunch of uncertainty. I didn't know when I was going to return back to China. So I'm like, just in case they fire me in China, I need to make some money. So they had
Right.
a substitute position. I was like, okay, I can do that for a few months. I was doing well until the student asked me if no, he questioned me about a grade. I feel like you cannot question me about a grade when you didn't even do the work. So
Right.
I gave you a 50 when you were supposed to get a 0. And the only reason I gave you a 50 is because of that whole no child left behind. When honestly, these kids are being left behind because I have an 11th grader who's reading on a fourth grade level, and he's questioning me about why he got a 50 instead of a
Right.
100. And so he told his mother, and I don't know if maybe she couldn't read or understand exactly why. And she came, she wanted to talk to me. I told her I'm in the middle of class. And she said, I don't give a F what you're doing. You can meet me outside now or later. And I'm like, oh, girl, I don't need this. I taught in China. I don't need this stress.
Wow. Oh my God. 3 months and that's it. You're like, this is not for me.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So, what motivated you to go to China to teach though?
I was living in Thailand. So my job, this was pre-pandemic. This was in 2018. My job, they approved me working from Thailand. And I'm always like, that's a little slight flex because it was before the pandemic. But they approved me working from Thailand. I met this girl who was like 22. I'm like 27. She's 22. And she was telling me how she was working in China. I'm like, oh, well, clearly you need an education degree. I have English, but it's no real degree in terms of the classroom.
Right.
And she's like, girl, mine was in I think it was criminal justice. And she's like, I love it because there's so many benefits. And I did the research right then and there in Thailand. And 3 months after coming back from Thailand, I went to China. But there's so many benefits to teaching English abroad that I encourage anyone who is interested to go for it.
Like, what are some of those benefits?
They pay for your housing. So I had a free apartment. Some schools, well, my schools pay for your meals, your breakfast and lunch. So I was just responsible for dinner. They pay for your transportation, and transportation not just to and from the school, but to and from your home country.
Mhm.
One of my schools actually paid for me to go on my summer vacation to 7 different countries. Um, they pay if some schools will pay if you want to further your education.
Mhm.
There is so many benefits. So I was able to save way more money teaching in China than I was ever able to save in the States.
Wow. 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 So, tell us when you first got to China, what was the culture like, the classroom size, the classroom environment? Because this is new to you, I'm assuming,
Right.
right?
Right. Before then, I had never taught in a classroom before. And I am really, this is going to sound really bad, but I think I am an A plus finesser. Like I am really good at finessing anything I need to get what I want. And I don't know if the school saw that I had a bachelor's degree in English and then I had a master's degree in clinical counseling. So they're like, oh, she's going to be the star. And then I got there, I'm like, and the kids are watching me, I'm watching them, and I'm like, and of course it got better. And then I did end up being the star teacher, but it took time. But the shock of it is number one, the expectations parents have, but it's completely different from in the States. So
Yeah.
in these other countries, education is a lucrative business and it's viewed as an investment. That child is an investment. So
Yeah.
the good thing is the parents will work with you. They will, if I said these kids need to read 20 books by tomorrow, the parents are like, can you send me a link? Do I need
Yeah.
a VPN? What else do I need? It was never any, this is too much. It was just like, what can we do to make sure our child is ahead? Um, so that I was shocked about that too, because I went in thinking parents would be lazy and they're just like whatever. No, the parents were, and I taught kindergarten my first year. The parents were like, so by the end of this year, we want to make sure that they can read blah blah blah. And then also with private institutions, um, I think for the most part in the States, the parents they run certain things, but it's more so the system, right? The board of
Mhm.
education in China with private institutions, even with public, the parents run everything. They can get you fired, they can get you hired, which I dealt with because when I got fired, the parents went to the admin on my behalf and got me rehired. They can do whatever they want to do, they are in charge. So
Yeah.
that was a big shock for me too. I don't even think it was the language so much in the classroom because they want you to only speak English. So, oh, and when you're teaching abroad, and I saw someone said that I don't know if they're teaching from Taiwan or if they're living in Taiwan. Lexi, I think is it
No,
Lexi?
she's living in Taiwan.
So if you're teaching a lot of these schools, you're not going to be the only teacher. I had three other people in the classroom with me. I had a nanny who did all the cleaning up. I didn't have to do anything. I only taught in the morning from 3 hours max, and then I could do whatever I want. I would go and take naps and then come back after lunch. It was it was I
It
miss
was
China.
awesome. And what was the class size like? Kindergarten?
So the first year in China, I had 18 kids, and it was four staff members in the classroom. And then the second year, there were 22, and then there were three of us in the classroom.
Mhm. You mentioned you got fired. You want to share with us?
Yeah, I will share. Today we are doing an open book. So when it was time, well, it wasn't time, but like I said before, when I first returned to the US, it was just supposed to be for Chinese New Year for vacation
Mhm.
for a month.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic started happening, and it was crazy because I left China and I didn't know anything about COVID until I got back to the States. Um, but the school started sending letters out to the staff who were in the States, and they were just like, you have a month to come back. Oh, yeah. First they said a month, and then they changed it and they said you have 1 week. We'll purchase your ticket. You need to be back. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not going back there. And then they had things circulating where they were doing what I would consider inhumane testing on foreigners for COVID. So if
Right.
it was in your mouth for COVID or your nose, they were swabbing another area. So yes, so when they said all of that, I'm like, oh no, I can't go back under those circumstances. And so they sent me a letter and said, well, you now have 3 days, or we're gonna let you go. And I said, okay, well, you can let me go today. You don't have to wait 3 days. And I went to my parents, who I was teaching the students virtually at that time, and I just politely told them, unfortunately, I'm so sad because I can't continue teaching my babies, and I know we've learned so much, but the school just fired me. And the parents went right to the school and said, I don't care what y'all have going on. She will continue to teach virtually. And that I was able to teach for 4 extra months because of.
Wow. Wow. So the parents did that.
But you
Wow.
have to be a good teacher. Like you got to do your job.
I get that. I
Like,
get that.
some
You
people
have
just
to
say, I
be,
would do whatever. They're gonna love me. No, no, no.
yeah, it's not whatever.
Right.
Um, you still have me on that area that they're swabbing for testing.
So when COVID, I don't want to say became, it wasn't popular, but when COVID started hitting mainstream and people started becoming more aware of COVID and what was going on, when foreigners were allowed to go back to China, they were actually doing anal swabbing. So not only were they doing anal swabbing, the foreigners, the which I get, I guess, with citizens being able to go home. But if I live in China and I have my own house in China or my own apartment, I should be able to do just like everyone else and go to my own space. They were making all foreigners go to these hotels for 21 days, not 14, 21 days, and you were having to test every 3 days. And I was just like that, I'm
That
not,
was too much. That
I
was
don't
too
want to
much.
practice on how to live in prison. So
Right.
that's a no for me.
All right. So, New York born, taught in China for 2 years, and you have lived in 4 countries. Did you teach in any of those other countries?
Yes, so I taught in Thailand, but it was more like a volunteer teaching English. And then I also taught in Mexico as a teacher for 5 months. It started as a substitute position. And then I realized they said, well, we're going to try to hire someone in the next month. And then as time kept going on, I'm like, I'm not seeing any teachers coming in for interviews, which everyone knows as a teacher how that can get. Where they say,
Yes.
we just need you to watch this room for about 2 weeks and we'll find
Hmm.
somebody. You just keep going to the same room month after month, and you're like, so after that, I was just like, okay, you don't need to hire anybody. I kind of like these students. It was my
Hmm.
first time teaching high school. So I was so nervous because I've always loved teaching the babies. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't really like teaching young kids because it's too much responsibility. I like
Hmm.
young kids because they make your job easy. They always tell on each other. You can just ask the question, who did what? They're telling on each other. And they're easier. I don't want to say trained, but they're easier to get into a schedule. High schoolers, they'll have a bad day if somebody looked at them wrong in the hallway. So it was an adjustment, but I love that I can have more detailed conversations with these students.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love teaching in Mexico. Actually, I'm going to see my students um, tomorrow, actually on Friday.
So I have another question. I know you in kindergarten, China, Mexico, you say high school. Are these students you're teaching English, right?
Right. I only teach English.
How challenging or easy is that teaching students whose first language is from Mexico, Spanish and China, Chinese? How difficult is that?
So what's funny about that is, like I said earlier, education is viewed as an investment. So you'll go in thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be sitting there and the kids are going to look at me." But even in kindergarten or first grade, these kids have been learning English since they were like 2 years old. So I did have maybe, excuse me, in my second year, I had at the most maybe 5 students who hadn't learned any English. And with those 5 students, I still teach them virtually to this day. And I taught them in China in 2019, but they didn't learn any English whatsoever. So that it was difficult, but then you also have people in the classroom, the staff who can translate.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is admin never wants you to depend on staff, which makes sense because if you're depending on staff, then you're not doing your own job.
Right.
They need you there. So I would come up with different ways to help people communicate. Like even when kids couldn't explain something, if they didn't know the word, I would make them try to explain it. We're going to do charades. No one help. We're going to get this
Right.
word. Explain to me in English what you're trying to say, and then I'll give you the word. Different things like that. In Mexico, it was much easier because these kids are 14 to 18, and they
Yeah.
have learned English since they were babies. So some of the kids, it's like speaking to a native speaker.
Mm-hmm. And in China and Mexico, no parent wanted you to meet them outside.
None. One situation in China, and this was after the teachers saw, well, the parents saw how great I was as a teacher. One of the kids, one of my students, who I love dearly, but she was a busybody. She was
Right.
the weirdest things, and I'm just like, girl, why? She went up to one of the boys in my class and just licked him. She just licked him on the face because she wanted to lick him, and it wasn't even sexual. She just was like, and I told the mom, she's like, "You scared me because you called me and said it was that is a problem. You cannot be in someone else's personal space and lick them if they
Right.
permission to lick them. And even if they gave you permission, we are in school. That's inappropriate."
Right.
So the mom, she was complaining, and then I solved it. I said, "You know what? My class was called the Shining Stars. Then we had one class called the Froggies, and then the other class was called the Acorns. Based on the name, you can tell which class was kind of like, and which class was like
Right.
taking it." So I said, well, I think to solve it, what we can do is we can transfer your student to the Froggies or the Acorn class. And I think that would probably work best for her. And the mom's like, no, 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 that's not what I want. That's because, with these parents, especially since it's very competitive, oh, they have conversations. I would have parents from the other classes reaching out to me, asking me, could I bring the kid in my class? And I'm like, that's not how it works. I can't just, oh,
Right.
you can come in here. But once I said that, she was like, no, I will handle her tonight. Tomorrow she'll be a new person. And I never had any more issues with her.
Wow. So I have to ask this question. You've taught in the United States, you've taught in China, Mexico. If you were to recommend a country for a teacher to live and work, which country would it be?
If it's someone who is really looking for the perks, they're wanting to save, they're wanting to immerse themselves, I would say China. China definitely, Asia period will pay its top tier. Well, not top tier, but it can be top tier depending on your background and your experience. And then there are just so many incentives that allow you to save, but allows you to travel. But also, what you've seen on social media when it comes to China, it can be a lot. The picture taken, the stares, the touching, all of that is true, and it's not exaggerated. So if it's
Mm-hmm.
someone that's just they feel like they can't manage with that, then no, China wouldn't be best. If it's someone who wants to experience a different country, but they're afraid to really just jump out, then I would say Mexico, because Mexico is a hop and skip back to the States. It doesn't pay. It doesn't pay good, but it's a good opportunity for you to get your feet wet. So if you have a remote job, you can definitely do both.
Okay. So what about the United States?
You see, I didn't mention them, right? You see that?
Wow. Okay,
I,
we get it.
no, no, no. Let me backtrack. I want to be clear. I think as an American, when I left the country because I had lived in the States, so I experienced a lot of things that most foreigners before they venture into the States, they experience. So I wasn't interested in getting a parent telling me to meet them outside just because I gave their child a deserving failing grade.
Right.
If when it comes to finances, a lot of people understand they come to the States for that reason. My dad is Jamaican. He's not an educator, but he definitely came here to have a better life.
Yeah.
But there are definitely other places you can go where you don't have to struggle as much because people say, oh, there's so much money. And I just had this conversation with my aunts who are Jamaican, and they're like,
Yeah.
as an American, you take it for granted. And I'm like, I don't take it for granted, but I grew up here.
Right.
The United States to me is not the same sis she was when you guys were coming over here in 1970 something and 1960 something.
Right.
There are other countries that can definitely compete in terms of money, incentives, experience that you'll gain, the
Yeah.
traveling aspect. There are way more countries that are more beneficial because, I mean, people might think teachers make a lot in the States, and I'm like,
No.
we, it ain't. It's not worth being told to meet a parent outside. It ain't that much.
Right. 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 Definitely get that. Okay, so tell us about your Teach Abroad program.
So I own a virtual learning academy for ESL learners. It started when I got fired, and then the parents asked me to continue teaching, and that was in March of 2020, and it just has evolved basically from word of mouth. So there are many virtual learning academies for ESL learners, like VIP Kids, ABC Mouse. It's a whole bunch of them. Unfortunately, China decided that they no longer want those platforms in China, so they started shutting them down. The good thing is I don't market online. Mine is basically word of mouth. So I
Right.
not most of my kids now, but I have several students who came because of my original Shining Stars. The parents were like, you need a tutor, this is the person. And it got to the
Right.
point with me living in Mexico, it's sometimes between 11 to 12-hour time difference. I'm based on like daylight savings time and where I am in the world. So I had to end up hiring two ESL teachers because I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And so now I wake up and I teach my original students for 40 minutes a day, Monday
Yeah.
through Thursday, and then I call it a day. But it basically started from the parents asking me to continue to teach.
Wow. Awesome. All right. You also wrote a book series that you say was inspired by your traveling to China. Can you tell us about that book? A little bit more about the book. I know I mentioned it earlier.
Yeah,
Um,
the amazing adventures of Kaylin the Kid Traveler. And this came out in 2020. No, in 2021. And I definitely have just been traveling because people keep asking me even to this day, like, so Kaylin is gonna stay in China now. The first book was Kaylin Moves to China. That was it. I'm like, it was self-published, self everything. It is a lot of work. So I love to keep as much of the money as possible when I do anything. So when I saw like I'm publishing it myself, I'm gonna get the money, I'm doing everything, I'm gonna keep everything. But I'm like, yeah, Kaylin is good in China. She ain't complained yet. She don't need to go nowhere else. But it was inspired by my travels. I remember my first year living in China, I was going through the library that we had at our school, and I won't even say I was surprised, but they had so many English books, and of course they all had white children on them or Asian children, which I understand because we're in Asia. But the fact that if it wasn't Asian, it was just white, I'm like, okay, this is why kids grow up assuming that every black person they see is from Africa or every black person they see is a criminal or this because they're not seeing people
right.
who look different outside of being white. I can't tell you how many times I taught the same kids for an entire school year. And one time I heard my kid saying to another kid in Mandarin, like, she's from Africa. And I'm like, now, Yeah, everybody know at this point I'm American. You just keep saying that. And he really was just like, I don't believe her. And it's because they're just outside of what media tells them about black people. They don't see a lot of black faces. They see a lot of white. So with
Right.
writing the book, I wanted to show people the differences and what faces look like outside of Asian and white faces when it comes to travel,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to education, when it comes to living abroad.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So, if people want to check out that series with Kaylin, where can they find?
It is on Amazon. It's also on my website. Kaylin Moves to China. That is the first book. They can definitely go ahead and purchase it. I thought about making it an ebook. I don't know. I gotta let the Lord lead me on where she's gonna go next, and maybe she'll go somewhere in 2025. By then, she'll be a teen. Who knows?
Oh, so it's on Amazon. All
Mhm.
right. So you are an educator. We know that you're doing awesome. You've taught in different countries, but also, if for those who don't know Karina, she has a IG page where she's been traveling all over the world. If you've not been following her or know of Karina, you can follow her and learn a few things and learn about some other types of food because I've been looking at the different types of food that she's been trying out. Can you share with us some of the places you've traveled to, some of the, should I say, rare
Uh,
food that you have tried before? And
yeah. So what haven't I tried? I don't know. I feel like that's easier. So I've eaten cat meat in Ghana, dog meat in China, live octopus in South Korea, um, fried tarantula in Mexico, scorpion in like 3 different countries, guinea pig in Peru. I mean, the list goes. At this point, my best friend the other day, I made a post about it on TikTok. She's like, um, maybe people shouldn't bring their pets around you. Not saying you're gonna eat them, but that's something that you know what people's pets taste like. Like no matter what pet they bring, a guinea pig, you didn't try that. A dog, you didn't did that. A cat, you didn't. And I'm like, that helps. So if there's like an apocalypse, I can tell you that meat right there. Go ahead and grill that one up. We're good.
Wow. So, as an educator, and it's good for educators to travel around and learn different cultures. What have you learned while traveling to these different countries and learning these different cultures? And what stood out most in these countries that you visited?
I think the first thing that I've learned is how to unlearn what I've been taught in terms of traveling. So I am a late bloomer when it comes to the travel world, specifically solo travel. I started traveling to in 2015, and that was to visit my grandmother. So in Jamaica. So I always said that doesn't count because you went to go visit family. So of course I'm going to be safe. They're not going to let nothing happen to me in Jamaica. So that don't count. But I really started traveling by myself internationally in 2018. And I remember 2018 and 2019, I was just about catching up. Like it was a competition. I would go to a country and only spend 2 days in one city of the country just to say, girl, I've been there. I didn't know nothing about it. I took some pretty pictures and that was it. Now I'm more interested in staying in places longer, traveling less, but staying in places longer. Because if I'm going to a place, I want to learn. I want to expose myself to different cultures. I want to get to know the
Yes.
people. I always say, like, I don't want to go and stay on a resort. I want to be hanging out with the local people within reason, because I do always want to
Right.
get home safely. But that's one of the things. One of the things that surprised me the most is how entitled foreigners can be. And this is not just for Americans. This is for so many different travelers. The I don't even want to say the name, but there are different countries that people go and travel, and they are just the rudest people. And I mean, of course, as Americans, but we go with this sense of entitlement as foreigners to other people's country, and it's beyond disgusting. And I
Yeah.
learned that we're so accustomed to being that way in our country that we think it's okay. We're so accustomed to speaking English that when we go to another country and that's not their native language, we start getting upset. Like, what do you mean? Like, I spend a lot of money here. well, maybe if you spent more, then we can get them in some English classes. So then you wouldn't have nothing to complain about. Um,
Right.
but yeah, that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
You say you went to Jamaica. Where in Jamaica you went to? 'Cause I don't know if you know, I'm Jamaican.
Oh yes, I can tell by your accent.
Okay. And I met Kay when I taught in Estill.
Really?
So yeah.
So my grandmother and well, my paternal family, they're from Mandeville. So when I went, I thought I was going. When my dad said you're going to visit your grandma and your his side of the family, I thought we was going in the grill, Ocho Rios. We were on the bus for like 3-4 hours, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm starting to see goats. I'm starting to see mountains. This is not no. You fooled me. You fooled me. And it was just my little sister and I. So it's also heightened because not only did my dad, you're Jamaican, so you understand like when you go back home, especially as an American, we do have to bring stuff. So my dad gave me money, and I'm now thinking somebody gonna rob me on here. I'm in the mountains. Who I'm gonna tell? But as soon as we got off the bus, like my family was right there, and the whole time
Mm-hmm.
we're right there. But yeah, it was. I really thought in the grill. I was like, whew, I'm excited to swim. We did end up spending some time in the grill with my aunt's best friend, but most of
Right.
it was in the mountains. Um, with these, and I can't even remember the name. Every time I go there, I'm like, I don't ever want to see them again. It starts with a letter P, but they look like water bugs, but they fly like birds. Pintois starts with a P. But I'm gonna Google that name because every time I think about that, it makes my skin crawl.
I'm not sure.
My uncle
I'm
threw
not
one
sure.
on us because I was just like, oh, the bugs here are so big. And he's like, oh my gosh. And he just threw one on me. And I'm like, my dad might come here and kill you.
Peanut Wally?
There we go. That's it. That's it. That's it. Oh my gosh. Some things. And then my uncle, I was like, the bugs here are so big. And my uncle was like, they don't bite, and just threw them on me. And I'm like, my dad, I'm gonna have to tell my dad now. You just ruined your relationship with your brother. So when
Wow.
his daughter.
Well, all right. So you spoke about your books and stuff. Tell us about, I know you have a traveling program. If people want to travel to different countries that you host, I'm not sure how it works. Can you share that with us, please?
Yeah, so I did my first group trip last year. And people kept saying, I really want to travel with you. I really want to travel with you. And I'm like, when you get used to traveling by yourself, it is so difficult to go back to traveling with other people. So I started doing group trips last year. And then now I'm doing 2 group trips next year. So I'm doing Thailand and I'm doing Kenya. And there are people who are like, you should do South Africa. You should do just every other country. I even have people who are like, you should do Jamaica. And I'm like, the only thing I know about Jamaica I can help you with is in the mountains. Them penny wallies, y'all, that's what y'all want to experience when y'all go there. That's all I can help you with in Jamaica. Because that's all they exposed me to. We can pull the
Right.
off the tree, we can eat, drink carrot juice, but that's all I got for you. So I did Kenya and Thailand because I lived in Thailand and I've traveled to Kenya enough that I felt comfortable. If I'm ever bringing a group with me, it needs to be in a space where I know that country like the back of my hand and I have connections that can help. So for Thailand, we're doing Bangkok and Phuket because I live there. And then we're also for Kenya doing Mombasa, Nairobi, and Masai Mara. So if
And people
you're
are,
traveling to Kenya or Thailand, travel with me.
so they can find you on IG at Karina World and reach out to you if they're interested.
Yes, you can follow me on at Karina Worldwide on Instagram, on TikTok, and then my website is karinaworldwide.com.
Awesome. All right, so there you have it, guys. We're gonna come to our question and answer section. We have with us today our lovely Karina Henry, American born, who have taught in America, China, and Thailand. She said her number one choice, if she was to recommend a country for you to teach, would be China, depending on, I don't remember. Hope you can rewatch if you weren't here. Second choice would be Mexico, and United States was not on our list for many reasons, even though she's American. So there you have it. If you have questions for Miss Henry, go ahead and put those in the chat box. We're going to take a 30-second break and we will be right back. Okay, so we're back with Miss Henry, guys. Again, if you're interested to go on travel vacations in Kenya and all the rest of the world that she's been traveling and trying all these different types of food, check her out on IG and TikTok at Karina World and also her website, you say karinaworld.com, right?
KarinaWorldwide.com, yes.
KarinaWorldwide.com. So if you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat box. I see Diane saying very enlightening interview. Thanks for sharing, Miss Henry.
Thank you.
I want to go to Kenya. If you want to go to Kenya, Diane, go ahead and follow her on IG so you can make your arrangements. And look, they have all the African men across in Kenya. I see Karina.
For a husband, child. Especially if you're looking, this is not the platform for that. But come to Instagram and I'll give you the lowdown on where they are.
All right, any questions? Go ahead and put those in the chat box. Yes, I'm definitely coming, Diane. I'm coming to Kenya. Olivia is asking, are your trips planned around teacher holidays?
So yes and no. They're more so planned around cultural experiences in that country. But I do keep in mind, because I'm still a teacher, that it needs to be during holidays. So Songkran is in mid-April. So it's like spring break for some. And then also the Great Migration in Kenya, it's in July. So people are off for summer. But I try to keep them in mind because I'm like, I don't want to be over there teaching either.
Zoe says she likes your energy and she's sorry she was late. You can go ahead and rewatch, Zoe. Any more questions from Miss Henry? And while we wait for the questions, Miss Henry, is there anything else you'd like to share with us this evening?
No, this has been, I've really enjoyed myself. This is the first time in a long time where I've had the opportunity to talk about my teaching experience. Most people just only want to hear about my travels or what I've eaten. So I've enjoyed like just talking. It's like a breath of fresh air. I don't want to just keep only talking about travel. Like I want to talk about education since that's like more so my passion. So
Right. Mm-hmm. Olivia's asking, what was it like being a Black teacher in Thailand?
oh, now China, it's so different because they're Asian countries, but the dynamic is totally different. Of course, you still have the stairs and the picture taken, but it a lot of times in Thailand, it was almost like they were like Beyonce, like admiration, like this beautiful Black queen. She decided to bless us with her presence in the classroom. But in China, it was more so like a Black person. What is she doing here? Like they were always shocked. When it came to also the classroom, I've only taught in private schools. So my experience is totally different from someone in a public school. In a private school, they usually have more funds, which is why I go to private schools because I'm allowed to do more. They're allowed to provide more. But it was similar in the way they structured the day in the classroom. But I had 32 kids. And then I had to tell the school, yeah, that's too much for me. And they're like, what's so funny is when I told the school 32 is a lot, they said to me, haven't you taught in America before? And I'm like, what? Wait, that's what y'all are hearing in these other countries that they got like 60 kids in the classroom? Is that what they think about America when it comes to teaching? They were like, oh no, we thought that they had like 100 kids for each classroom. And I'm like, I've never seen a classroom like that. But even if they did do it, I wouldn't be teaching it because I'm complaining about 30 something kids in my class. So
Right.
yeah, but that was it. Everything else was pretty normal.
Okay. I have a question. Where are you living now? I know you've been so many places. Where are you currently living right now at this moment?
I live in Mexico. I've been living in Mexico for 2.5 years, and this is basically home for me at this point.
Wow. Wow.
I love it here.
You do? What?
I already told my mom, if you want, I mean, I visit my family like every 2, 3 months, but I'm like, if you want to see me every day, you would need to move to Mexico at this point. And I'll
Wow.
move, but I'm not moving back to the States.
Wow.
Never.
Wow. 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 So if I'm interested to go to Mexico, what areas would you say I'm to visit?
It depends on what your interests are. Like if you want mm, to go to like the touristy areas and you want to live, like are you if you're wanting to live, I would recommend like Playa del Carmen. Obviously, biased opinion because that's where I live. Cancun, I would stay away from Tulum. Tulum is just like Brooklyn. It is the Mexican version of Brooklyn now. So
Wow.
when people want to live, I'm like, don't move to Tulum. It's too expensive. Um, Mexico City, I would stay away from. It's the same. It's too expensive. Um, to vacate. Oh, Guadalajara. That is my favorite city in Mexico because the weather is perfect. It's almost like weather in New York, where it's not cold, cold. Well, no, New York is cold, cold. Scratch that. The weather gets to like 60s, but where you can wear a light sweater. But here in Playa, it's always hot, even in the winter. So sometimes I'm like, I don't ever get to wear a sweater or a jacket or look cute. I always look like I'm going to the gym, and I don't be going to the gym.
I guess you mixed up your southern roots. You did mention you have southern roots in the United States. Is which state is that?
In South Carolina. So I moved from New York for college. And then after I graduated from college, I just stayed in South Carolina. So,
So that's what you're mixing that weather with, not New York. Because
right. Because I was like, first I said New York, and I'm like,
no. All
not
right. Diane is asking, are you fluent in other languages?
So I can have a conversation in Spanish. Yes, to a certain extent. Mandarin, I was good when I lived in China. However, my tones are so off now that I went to order Chinese food like last year and I was like, let me practice. And they were looking at me like, and then the guy's just like, can you speak English? And I'm like, oh, okay. Can I get a sweet and sour chicken, please? But uh, Mandarin is very difficult because one word with the 4 different tones can mean different things like shu, 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 shi. So I'm too lazy. I'm just like, well, shi, ying, you, lao, shi. And if and then hopefully you just use context clues and you understand what I'm saying. But my Spanish is pretty decent.
Yeah, well, I didn't understand what you said. Shoo, 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 shoo. Oh, shoo. Mm-mm. I did not get that. Anyway,
He said I am an
I don't
English.
know what. Zoe's asking, what nurse saying I miss teaching kids in China, English online. And Zoe's asking, what's your role as a teacher in Mexico, assistant or lead teacher?
So I don't teach anymore in the classroom, but when I was teaching last year, I was the lead teacher. I was supposed to be the substitute, and then they said you only have to work here as a substitute for 1 month. And I told them off the rip, I know that the regular role as a teacher is Monday through Friday. I don't work on Fridays. Friday is the weekend for me. So they worked around my schedule and I was okay with that. And then as the months and the weeks started passing by, I started realizing they weren't even doing interviews. They were just like, hopefully Karina falls in love with these kids and we don't have to hire, which is what happened. I was just like, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was the lead teacher.
Okay. And you say you were at the high school in Mexico.
I was a high school teacher, yes. And in and this is not just Mexico, but a lot of countries, they consider eighth grade high school. So from eighth grade to 12th grade.
Okay, yeah. In Jamaica, also, eighth grade is high school. I think, no, seventh grade. We start high school at seventh grade
But
in
it was
Jamaica.
so confusing to me because I'm like, when they would group them together, I'm like, these kids are too young to be with 12th graders. Then I'm also like, well, okay.
Hmm. Diane says, I love that Friday's the weekend for me. Not Friday's not no weekend for you. Anyway, guys, we've come to the end. I'm not
Don't do
seeing
that to
any.
Diane. Diane is claiming that for her future. Diane said, yes, I'm manifesting Fridays being the weekend for me.
She might mean for you. I love that Friday is the weekend for me, Diane, or for Karina.
She's like, it don't matter. Friday is the weekend. I'm manifesting it. That's what I want.
Okay, guys, we have come to the end. There's no more questions. We had fun today listening to Miss Karina Henry, American born, who have migrated to work outside of the United States. She has taught again in China, Mexico, Thailand, also her home country. Only difference, the parent wanted her to meet her outside. I don't know why, but I'm
I
assuming.
didn't do that. So they did not say it. I just caught myself. She never said it was going to be this. But in my mind, I thought, oh, she wants this. So I thought
That's
she
the
did.
listen. That's the only reason a parent would say meet her outside.
And
We
you know
know that.
what's so bad is as a teacher, in my mind, but I'm still human. I'm like, if I go outside and you keep talking to me like this and I go outside, I don't want talking either because I'm going to get fired and it's going to be. So I hope this is the energy you want. This is what you're gonna get if I go outside.
Wow. Well, yes, I'm speaking it into existence. Yes, I know
Yes,
that's what you're doing,
Diane. Yes.
Diane. Well, let me take this time to thank you for coming to share with us your experience. We appreciate it. We have learned a lot. For those who are watching and might be considering to teach outside of their home country, you have given them some information on different countries that they can think about and maybe make that leap of faith, or maybe still want to come to the United States. Whichever route they take, we want to thank you for your experience and your knowledge that you shared with us today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Miss Henry. Diane said, thank you, Miss Henry. Big up yourself. You're
Thank
Jamaican.
you.
Yeah. All right. So, guys, if that's it, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.